Greetings and salutations, my friends. Welcome to another glorious day on the road to Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. First thing I want to touch on is there will be a lot of comparisons to EverQuest and World of Warcraft in my videos, and that is because most of my experience in MMOs comes from these games, and no game comes close to describing the dream that is, in my mind at least, Pantheon than EverQuest. Also of note, all materials and imagery come from PantheonMMO.com. Yes, that's right, PantheonMMO.com, where you can get all the latest news and media from Visionary Realms. Now onward, my friends, to my most anticipated class in Pantheon, my favorite from good old EQ, and that is the Enchanter. In Pantheon, the Enchanter is, and I quote, "Like the current of a raging river is the pull of an enchanter on the mind of their adversaries. Through a single word, the Enchanter can turn the intent of an enemy and break even the strongest of wills into submission. Whether through trickery or coercion, the Enchanter is adept at controlling the battlefield and forming order out of chaos." The role of the Enchanter in the group is support, using the resource of mana, able to use cloth and arcane shields as armor, I'm assuming arcane shields is for gnome, and wielding daggers, clubs, staves, long staff, and the quarterstaff. Featured abilities include the passive Rune Skin. Oh yes, you will naturally absorb a percentage of incoming damage up to a limit. Once that limit is absorbed, Rune Skin will have to recharge for a short duration before passively reactivating at full effect. If not fully depleted, Rune Skin damage absorption will slowly replenish over time when not taking damage. This is certainly a twist on the rune spells in EQ that required the consumption of a regent for every cast, giving the caster a shield of protection that absorbed a set amount of damage and allowed casting without being interrupted by basic attacks. To see it as a rechargeable ability for the Enchanter only is interesting to say the least, as this was a must late game for all casters in EQ. Rend the mind. Rend the enemy's mind with a burst of mental energy, dealing magic damage and restoring some mana to your group. I love seeing this kind of spell, and hopefully it points toward a more active playstyle for the Enchanter rather than just saving mana for those clutch CCs. This, in theory, should allow the Enchanter to assist the party in damage as well as giving your group a bit of mana regen. How good this will be, or indeed how viable, we will have to see. And to be fair to VR, they have said on many occasions they want a more active style of gameplay than was in EQ, with every caster's most favorite pastime, that of sitting on your butt. An absolute favorite among all classes, indeed. Next up, Fascinate. Mesmerize an enemy, incapacitating them. Any damage will break the effect. This, my friends, is the bread and butter of the Enchanter from EQ, allowing groups to pull many mobs at once, but allowing the group to take them on one at a time. The masterful use of this ability is what separated the wheat from the chaff in group settings. This is what gives the Enchanter complete control over the battlefield. The biggest downside of the Enchanter, in my opinion, is that you can do everything right and still lose. Either because of a group members not paying attention and hitting your messed mobs, or they resist and now hate you more than damnation itself as you run in circles screaming prayers to whatever god you hold dear that your tank can grab aggro. Pro tip here, boys, he can't and you're Lyrith's Grace. Enchant a target's mind to judge you more amiably, increasing your faction with them to the next rank. Another staple of the Enchanter class, allowing you to buff your faction, potentially giving you bonuses you may not otherwise have had, or are able to perform interactions you normally could not. Not the sexiest of spells, but a nice tool for the kit nonetheless. I imagine there will be all kinds of shenaniganry with this spell. Gavin's Wild Display. Release a surge of energy, stunning up to 4 enemies around you for a short time. A nice area effect crowd control for those oh-ish moments when running like Brave Sir Tango is the most prudent of actions. The wording and description allude that the stun will only last for a few seconds at most. However, it may be enough time to use Fascinate and hard mez 2 or more mobs before the stun wears off. This could potentially be a clutch ability that would allow the Enchanter to rein in an out-of-control pool or protect more important group members. If the Cleric lives but you die, that's called a win, my friends. Next up, Isolate. Numb an enemy's senses, reducing their assist radius. The standard lull spell, I'm assuming, allowing the caster to reduce the number of enemies pulled in any given engagement. In the original EQ, it had a chance of failure of both enemies resisting and aggro from others who might have noticed such shenaniganry. Only time will tell if VR will also include such dangers when using this spell. In many instances, it was safer just to pull 5 or 6 mobs and just mez them all than to try to lull a few, as failure would result in pulling them anyway, and all aggro would be on the caster. Whisper of Tassir. Flood your group with the Whispers of Tassir, increasing the rate of mana regeneration. Lovingly called Crack in EQ, because yeah, it was kind of like that. Just another staple for the Enchanter, and one that will ensure open spots in groups across Terminus, and buff sellage galore. I'm a big fan. Illusioncraft, Rapid Mind. Graft an illusion of urgency to an ally's mind, increasing their spell haste. I can see many uses for this, from clerics to wizards. However, I wonder if only one illusion may be on any given target at a time, with perhaps many more useful illusion grafts in the works. In EQ, there wasn't any Enchanter spell haste. However, there was melee spell haste, which Enchanter got the best buffs of all. So good. Shock and Awe. Confuse an enemy with bizarre imaginings, causing them to attack another nearby enemy for a short time. This sounds a lot like a short duration charm spell with no control. I really like the idea behind this because charm was hard to pull off in group settings. Most players thought it far too dangerous when adventuring as a group, but it was extremely powerful if you could pull it off. In EverQuest and most MMOs, mobs do far more damage than players, so turning a mob could skyrocket your DPS. The danger was that charm could break at any time, creating an extreme hazard within the group, and gods forbid it break during a pull. This seems a nice balance, allowing use in group settings but not overpowered to the point of absurdity. The short timer will help the Enchanter contribute to DPS whilst maintaining that support role, potentially crowd controlling 2 mobs with 1 spell, getting some sweet, juicy mob on mob action, potentially turning the tide of any battle. Hopefully the AI will be programmed not to attack mez mobs, because I can see that going sideways at light speed. Eumize Dulling. Disenchant the materials of an enemy's weapon to weaken it, reducing its damage potential. Depending on the actual effect, this could be a great ability. In EQ, enchanters and others got the ability to disempower, which decreased the strength of your enemy. I would assume this would be a very similar effect. Squeeze Mimicry. Disguise yourself in the likeness of a nearby object in the environment. This illusion is quite effective and will fool most enemies, causing them to ignore you. Any movement will break the effect. I love the equivalent spell in EQ, Minor Illusion, which often turned you into furniture. A low-level spell that gave you a glimpse of what could be possible with illusions. On many occasions, I have heard VR say that NPCs will act and say different things around different people, or when alone. Imagine becoming a torch or a painting eavesdropping, potentially revealing secrets when the environment and NPCs are unaware of you. Thought Thief. Infiltrate the short-term memory of an enemy and completely erase their hate towards you. Aggro Wipe at its finest, my dudes. This spell could be very useful for mobs that resist your other spells, as Enchanter spells tend to generate massive amounts of hate, so it might save you when a mez fails you. Illusioncraft. Entrusted with the Enchanter's art of illusion crafting, you are able to discover, learn, and use illusion-based abilities. I'm not sure if this will be different than spell-based illusions. It could be a fancy way of saying it. It could also be something entirely new, perhaps innate abilities that can be formed at will with little or no mana, or physical contraptions that must be constructed. It says crafting, after all. I certainly like the direction that VR has taken with this ability list. To be quite frank, without numbers and a full list of abilities, it is impossible to truly judge what it all really means or how effective the class will be or play. For me, though, it hits all the right buttons for a hard CC class like the EQ Enchanter, with a Mez, a quote charm, unquote, mana regen, lull, and illusions. But with a twist and a turn, and in the future dips and dives with a dodge or two, I'm sure. Enchanters may be one of 5 races: the Darkmere, Dwarf, Elf, Human, and the Gnome. Yes. Have to confess now, I'm partial to the Darkmere. I love the idea behind a race of merfolk with innate swimming and the ability to hold breath for much longer, and is a big reason I like the Ixah, that'd be the lizard folk in EQ. Gnomes seem to be the best for mana pool, as they gain extra mana for each point of intelligence and get innate 20% resist to silence. With the same gear, a gnome will probably have more mana, while humans have spell haste of 2% and an increased effectiveness of skills and abilities modified by charisma. I imagine that an enchanter may possibly benefit from this, as spells like Mez and Charm often take into account your character's charisma. This is a class I feel has gotten a short end of the stick in modern MMOs, or is just non-existent in many games today. In ye olde EverQuest, the Enchanter was a crowd-control master, a caster, capable of mesmerizing, charming, and crafting various illusions. Most modern MMOs have done away with a pure crowd control class in favor of a streamlined class lineup and class interdependence. In WoW, for example, not having a CC-focused class demands the role must be divided amongst the other classes. WoW and most of its clones are based around the holy trinity of group play, with a tank, a healer, and damage dealers, with everyone having a few abilities to augment the group with crowd control. Examples include a sap for rogue, frost trap for hunters, and a warlock's seduce. Pantheon, in theory, will be a quaternity, with a tank, healer, DPS, and that's right, crowd control rounding out the group composition. This ability list, coupled with the dev's statements, gives me a warm, fuzzy feeling inside that no grown man should ever have. But in all seriousness, if such things exist, it bodes well indeed for my favorite class/role in MMOs, and I am beyond enthusiastic for this to become reality. In Pantheon, other classes can and will and do have CC, but will require sacrificing damage and or make it difficult to do some content without the dedicated individuals. Now, this was shown to great effect recently in a Pantheon live stream and was recorded from multiple perspectives. Pantheon Plus, Nathan Napalm, Bazgrim, and a dev from VR itself named Ronick. These creators and developer got to play Pantheon Rise of the Fallen in a build meant to show off what the game can do to the community and potential investors. They adventured through the Fortress of Devier with increased difficulty, showing off 5-man group play, 6-man being a full group. As the group was without a CC specialist, the rogue stepped up to supplement. These guys played it super duper serial. And it shows. A well-fought session, being a man down and without an enchanter. Brave adventurers indeed. Great work, guys. Link down in the description below. And my dear viewer, I cannot recommend this to you enough. Oh yeah, I love seeing me some super serial group play, imagining the possibilities with the Enchanter described above. I have great hopes for Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, and I hope that you too, dear viewer, can see the diamond in the rough. Thank you for watching Tango Talks, my friends. This is Tango Hotel, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do that YouTube thing, like and subscribe down below. I stream almost every day at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time on twitch.tv/Tango Hotel, where I play a variety of games with you guys, from RPGs to strategy. come, stay a while and listen. Alright, dudes, until next time, peace out.